What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode on The Black Experience, y'all. Welcome back to another episode in Season 5. I appreciate you guys so much for your support. Thank you for 2+ years of this podcast. I hope everyone is enjoying their 2025. We are almost done with January. So to all my new viewers and subscribers, thank you for joining me and welcome. And to all my old ones, thank you for 2 years plus of consistent support. I appreciate you guys. And as usual, I have a very special guest with me today. Man, oh man, guys. Today, y'all, I have someone who is a K-12 school administrator with over 20+ years of experience. He is a father, he is a husband, and he's also a lifelong learner. So let's put our hands together and let's bring up Dr. Joseph Williams III.
Happy to be here, guys.
How you doing, Doc? How's the day been so far, Sunday?
All is well, all is well. You know, I always come into the new year with goals that I want to have for myself, but I always feel like the best is yet to come. So, yeah, super excited for 2025.
Yeah. I feel like every time a new year hits, you know, there's always the resolutions we have. And
sure.
And sometimes, you know, by February, you know, a lot of people are like, forget them, you know, and they ditch them.
Yeah, you're right. That's why I always try to start mine in December 1st. Instead of January 1st, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm not going to stick with it, it's already gone by the wayside by January 1st. So,
yeah. Start early. But
yeah, that's it.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say I'm very appreciative of the connection that I have to you.
Yeah.
You know my sister Samai.
Yeah.
And your daughter knows her too. And
absolutely.
You know, she told me a lot about you and as this podcast progressed, she was like, "Man, you gotta have Dr. Williams on." I'm like, "Who's Dr. Williams?" And she told me about you and how she tutors your daughter. And I was like, "Why not?"
Yeah, it's good. I mean, so you know, of course, when you're a school administrator, you're not supposed to have favorites, but definitely one of my favorite students of all time. And I've been doing this a long time. Yeah. But just her, you know, just being so genuine and just how she is with my daughter, how she still is with my daughter, and she's in college.
Yes.
But yeah, I had the opportunity to be her principal for 2 years, so it was really cool. I just really hated that I wasn't able to hand her that high school diploma, but I did come to her graduation. Me and Juliana were able to attend, and it was a great moment. And I'm really proud of her, and the best is yet to come for her as well. So definitely happy to meet you, her big brother. She's told me a lot about you. I feel like I know you already, but it's amazing. We're just now meeting, so it's really cool.
Yeah. I hope you say good things about me.
Oh, 100.
He's annoying.
Great role model. And, you know, I was actually expecting to see you at her graduation. She's like, yeah, well, he has a graduation today, too. So, yeah, the fact that, you know, you've been a great role model for her, and not only her, but your other brothers and sisters, I think just speaks volumes about how you have been a good role model. And man, I'm just super impressed with this setup. You know?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's definitely something I never thought I'd get into.
Yeah.
But here we are. Right?
Let's do it, brother.
Let's do it. But yeah, doctor, so let's kind of kick it off a little bit talking about your background in early life. So if you could share a little bit some insight about your childhood, your upbringing, what it looked like in Kansas City and all that good stuff.
Well, shameless plug, go Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs are in the AFC Championship this year, so super excited about them, the opportunity to potentially three-peat. But, yeah, I grew up in Kansas City. At least the first part of my upbringing was in Kansas City until my mom remarried, and then we moved to Louisiana. But definitely like to consider myself a Missouri boy. Kansas City, Missouri, for you people that don't know, is the show-me state, so I'm really proud of being from there. But yeah, it was a tough upbringing, man. My mom had me when she was 18. I'm not even her oldest child. She had my oldest brother at 14. By the time she was 27, she had 6 kids by 3 different men. So really tough upbringing. And in a lot of cases, you know, people that are born into my existence with how I was born, you know, brought into this world, sometimes if they look like us, they end up with numbers across their chest or they end up in the ground 6 feet under. So very grateful that my mother changed her life. People ask me, well, okay, if that was your introduction to this world, how did you end up being Dr. Williams with 5 degrees, right? Well, I always like to say that when my mother's life changed, then our life changed. When she got her world together, it made our world get together. So, yeah, she always used to tell us we might live in the hood, but the hood doesn't have to live in us. and the quickest way out of the hood is a good education. And we all believed her.
Wow.
So all of us, all 6 of us have our college degrees. I have a doctorate, I have an MBA, I have a master's in ed leadership, I have a bachelor's, I have an associate's. So yeah, I mean, I really believed her, right?
Yeah.
So I really bought into what she was telling us. And so, yeah, I actually wanted to be a lawyer, actually, to be honest with you. I was on my way to law school. My youth pastor was an attorney, and he had a beautiful wife, had 2 beautiful daughters, one of who I really liked when I was growing up. And I was like, I want this life.
Yeah.
And so he was the most positive black male role model that I had growing up. And yeah, I wanted to be a lawyer. Everything that I did was geared toward me being a lawyer one day and, getting accepted in a law school. But there's an old saying, if you want to make God smile, tell him your plans because he might have other plans.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what happened, man. I actually went through undergrad. I majored in pre-law. Yeah. Thought I was on my way to law school, but funny thing happened. My last year, I only needed 2 classes to graduate. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy because I was broke. And somebody was like, hey, well, you ought to think about subbing because you can work every day. You can work any day
Sure.
that you're available.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, that sounds cool to me. And I always like to say, no one ever had to teach me how to manage students. Mm. And I just give a shameless plug to Janice Johnson, my mother, because the way she, ruled over us, it just really translated for me. And so it didn't matter if they put me in an elementary classroom, middle school classroom,
whatever,
high school classroom, black, white, didn't matter. Yeah. The hood, the suburbs, I knew how to handle kids. And so I feel like that's a real gift. And I really liked it. And I was like, man, I really like this thing called education. I'm getting paid for it. And the kicker was they allowed me to coach the basketball team. Oh, I was in heaven, brother. I was like, oh, man, this is me. Y'all going to pay me to teach and coach? I was like, this is what up.
It's a win-win.
But I was torn, man, because, like I said, I was already accepted. Every law school I applied to, I was accepted. Mm-hmm. So I was accepted into 7 different law schools all over this country and had, tuition paid for. Some of them gave me a stipend. So I was really torn, and so I just prayed about it, and I was like, you know what, I'm tired of being the poor, broke, black kid. I'm just going to defer law school because, they will allow you to defer for 1 year. And so I deferred for a year. I said, I'll just teach for a year, save some money, and then I'll go to law school. Mm. Well, my brother, that was 30 years ago. Wow. I'm still doing this. I'm still doing this thing called K-12 education. So, yeah, I just feel like I was put on this earth to be a K-12 educator and to help other young people become that lawyer, doctor, whatever they want to be.
Yeah, yeah. So, first of all, shout out to your mom. That is incredible, to have all 6 of your kids be so well educated.
Sure.
That is incredible. When you think about your mother, would you consider her as someone who is a role model, someone that you look up to that inspired you to kind of pursue that education? Or what was the thing that inspired you to go, 5 degrees into education?
Yeah, it wasn't like, and let me say this too, I'm the second oldest, but I'm the first to earn the associates, the bachelor's, the master's, the MBA, and the doctorate. So it wasn't like I had that real role model to say, hey, this is the way to do it, or I did it, you can do it kind of thing. Sure. I was really scared. And I was fortunate because I was really good in school, really did well academically. But when you don't have that role model, and as human beings, we are born as a clean slate into this world. And so a lot of things aren't based on instinct. It's based on behavior, it's based on beliefs. And all behaviors learn behavior, all beliefs are learned beliefs. And so it was really hard for me to see myself being successful because I didn't have anybody before me that was that role model that, hey, they got their degree, you can get the degree, especially in my immediate family. Like I said, my youth pastor was a lawyer, but he wasn't related to me. It wasn't like he was my father or my mother or an uncle or something like that. But yeah, I just, had faith in God that I could do it. And my mom she's a very spiritual lady. And she always preached to me and my brothers and sisters the power of belief in God and everything that we do. So yeah, she's definitely a role model for me. And I actually wrote a book about my mother. It's out there. It's called Mama Put Us First. And, she, for all intent and purposes, didn't have, a young adulthood because she had all of us as kids. And she was doing it all on her own until she met my stepfather when I was almost 14 years of age. So, I'm definitely grateful to her. And all that I am, all that I ever hope to be, the foundation was started with my mother.
Yeah. Yeah, not too long ago, Dr. Williams, I actually had my mother in that very seat for my first ever Tigrinya podcast that I did.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it was special. It
Yeah.
got way more attention than I thought. I was very nervous because I'm fluent in the language, but to do a podcast with it, you know, it's a whole other thing.
That's
so,
deep. Yeah.
my mother is very inspiring to me too.
That's good.
She always pushed me, including my dad. My dad in education, they always pushed me to do that. They were like, you know, we didn't come to the States, you know, for you to just hang out or something. You know, you could come here to take care of business and help out your country back home too. You know,
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But that's really cool.
That's really cool, man.
When it comes to, because when I think of a principal or a teacher like you, and the 5 degrees that you have, you know, I think of leadership a lot and the impact that you have on children. When it comes to those two things, you know, you've held leadership roles in various educational settings, including something called turnaround schools. And this is something I didn't know about before I read your resume.
Yeah.
You know, what were some of those critical or crucial qualities of an effective leader that's working with K through 12, or just any teacher out there that you were able to kind of learn and pick up from the years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do believe that there's an old saying that says, children don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. I'll repeat that. Children don't care how much you know. They don't care about those 5 degrees, right? Until they know how much you care. So for me, it was really showing the children that I care and that I want them to be successful, and I'm committed to their success. And I also look at it, especially as a principal, maybe not so much as a teacher, but as a school leader, I look at myself as almost like the surrogate parent. So when a child is in my school, their parents are entrusting me to make sure that they're in a safe place, that they're in a safe place, and that they're learning whatever they need to learn for those 8 hours that they're with me. So I take that charge very, very seriously. And I think it's very important for young people to know that they have people, first of all, that care about them. But second of all, I think representation is important as well.
Yes.
And so, you know, our schools, particularly our public schools, are getting more and more diverse. And unfortunately, that same thing is not happening in our faculty ranks. So you might have a very diverse school that might be 60, 70% black and brown students. And, you know, conversely, the teacher population might be majority white.
Right.
And so I think I'm on a crusade, to be honest with you, to get more black and brown people. I actually, even your sister, I was like, you need to consider teaching. You got a job.
She is undecided. So
yeah, 100.
Absolutely.
And truthfully, she would be amazing. But again, you know, her path is her path. But no, whenever I see someone that has that heart, has that compassion, that look like us, super important, man, because representation is super important. And we do need more black and brown educators, black and brown school leaders. And you graduated from Ballard too, so you know I was an administrator in Ballard, and you know what I'm talking about. So
you definitely need that.
I'll just keep it at 100.
I had one black teacher, Dr. Coleman, who taught Spanish.
Okay.
Spanish 1.
Okay.
At Western, I didn't have one black teacher at all.
Not one.
And I didn't even see one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's in college.
And this is in college.
Wow. I did not know that. I knew it was some, you know, in some pockets of Washington, particularly Seattle, there are some schools like that. I didn't know the colleges were like that.
The colleges were like that,
that's
too.
crazy.
At least Western. I mean, Western is not diverse at all. Yeah.
Sure, but that's the one that's up toward Bellingham, right?
Yes, in Bellingham. Yeah. Beautiful city.
Close to Canada. Yeah.
So colder it gets, I guess our people don't want to be there.
Like, hey, where the heat at? Send me to California or Arizona.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you think it is that, you know, while the student population is increasing, why is it that black and brown, you know, folks are not getting into those teaching positions? Do you think it's accessibility, or do you think it's just overall just interest in other majors?
Yeah, I think back to my own self. Like, I mean, truthfully, 30 years ago, teachers weren't making anything. Like, you know what I'm saying? Administrators weren't making anything. So definitely from a financial standpoint, you would look at other professions. So I get that. I would say that it's not the case so much anymore, particularly in Seattle. So, you know, even in talking to your sister about considering K-12 education, I was telling her, I was like, you know, Samai, if you graduate, and especially if you get your master's, you coming out making 60, 70K year one, right?
Yeah.
As a 22, 23, 24-year-old graduate. Yeah. So, yeah, it's changing. I mean, it's not changing quick enough, unfortunately. But I do think that it's important for people like myself to get that message out there. Like, A, you're needed,
Yes.
and B, don't compare the profession of today, the K-12 profession of today, to the K-12 profession of 20, 30 years ago. Because they're right. Like, there was no money in it. But, I would say the average teacher with 10, 15 years of experience that lives in Seattle and has a master's, they're making $100,000 a year. They're making a 6-figure salary.
Yeah.
And that's for 9 to 10 months. 9 to 10 months, guys. That's how much, teachers can make. And so, like, even myself, like, I obviously have 30 years and a doctorate, but if I was teaching right now, I'd be making 140, 150 as a teacher.
As a teacher.
So you can imagine what I'm making as an administrator, right?
Yeah.
So even though I didn't get into this amazing profession for the money has come.
Yeah.
Right? And so you could have never told me 30 years ago when I was making $17,000 a year in my first teaching job in 1994 that I would be making, over 200K, 30 years later. So I didn't get into it for the money. There's an old saying, you find something you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. But I also believe that if you pursue your passion, your true passion,
yes,
the money will come.
Yeah, it's just a byproduct of it, right?
100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Has teaching changed? I mean, have students changed?
Students have changed.
From the 90s to now? Are they getting easier to teach?
Not even close. No, I think, and it's nothing against the students. Like, kids are kids.
Right.
And I would say a 13-year-old is going to be a 13-year-old is going to be a 13-year-old, whether you're talking about 1994 or whether you're talking about 2025. It doesn't matter.
Sure.
I do think, though, that in the society that we live in today, it's you're competing against so much. Like, I'll give you a good example. In 1994, when I started teaching, there were 3 channels on TV, right? ABC, NBC, CBS. That was it, right?
Right.
That was, and maybe PBS, right? The public broadcasting system,
Yeah.
right? But other than that, that's it, right? What do we have today? We have,
too many of them. Too many.
Video on demand.
YouTube.
You got CBS.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Cinemax. You got HBO. You got. It's crazy.
Yeah, it
Netflix. Netflix didn't even exist in '94.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what Hulu. None of those existed back then, right? So when you're competing against all of those for students' attention, when you're competing against the internet for their attention, these mobile phones that we have, it's super, super difficult to retain their attention and their focus. And so I think that's the biggest issue.
Yes.
And now you have AI coming down the pike, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm actually starting a whole podcast, YouTube series on AI and how it's going to impact K-12 ed, because it's coming whether we're ready for it or not. And so I don't think we're ready for it. And whenever there's something new, unfortunately, I have to be honest, like, it just seems like the Black and brown communities always get it last. And so I'm really committed to making sure that doesn't happen, because, there's a verse in the Bible that says, my people perish for lack of knowledge. And so for me, it's super important to make sure that people have the knowledge. Now, what they do with it is totally up to them, right?
Sure.
But they're not going to be able to say that they didn't know.
Yes.
And so for me, it's about getting that knowledge out there, letting them know what's coming down the pike. I think about my own daughter, for example. She's the youngest of my 2 kids. She's 11 years of age. 30 years from now, in the year 2055, right, she will only be 41 years of age. She will not even be as old as I am right now. I'm 56 years of age. I know, black don't crack. But I'm just saying,
You look good for your age.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, she won't even be close to my age now.
Right.
In the year 2055, what kind of world is she going to be living in? What kind of world would this be in that time? And are we truly preparing those 10, 11, elementary, middle, high school kids for the world that they're going to live in 30, 40, 50 years from now? Wow. So really, really committed to being a crusader about AI and how it's going to truly impact our life. You already see it now.
Oh, 100%.
And it's not even close. Like, this is the worst AI will be. It's only going to get ChatGPT. Dude, it's only going to get better and better and better. This is the worst ChatGPT will ever be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's based on feeding it more and more information and knowledge. And this is the least amount of knowledge it's ever going to have. It's only going to get more and more and more knowledge.
Certainly.
And it's only going to get better and better and better. And are we truly prepared for how that's going to look 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah. No, we have to. I mean, that's I mean, even for me, ChatGPT was not even, it came around my last year of college.
Sure.
Even. But I can't imagine if I had access to
Ooh.
it in high school, middle school. Oh, man. Oh, man. You know, that's another distraction you're going to fight.
For sure.
And to stay true to your work, you know, and not trying to just go there. You know, I think access and educational access and all that we're talking about, I think it brings up equity for me.
Sure.
And for you, you know, you're deeply passionate about equity in K through 12 education.
Sure.
You know, how, from your experience, how have you worked to ensure that students from different backgrounds, low income, middle income, high income, all socioeconomic backgrounds, how have you been able to kind of help them kind of have access to that basic quality education, pretty much?
Yeah, that, for me, now I was born in 1968. And for those of you who don't know, that was the year that Martin Luther King was killed.
Yes.
Right? And so we're actually getting ready to come up on, the Martin Luther King Day celebration on Monday. And what really bothers me, because one of the dreams that Martin Luther King talked about was, people that look like us being judged based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And truthfully, in 1968, the same schools that you graduated from, the same schools that I went to, we wouldn't have been able to go to in 1968. Yeah. So in terms of access, in a lot of ways we have access. What bothers me is the value system, okay? Now I'm gonna get a little controversial here and some people might disagree with me, but until we as a community start valuing education as much as we value somebody being able to run a football or shoot a basketball or dance or entertain, then we're gonna always be behind, right? Because the bottom line is this: if our young people are not able to read, write, and comprehend by the end of their third grade year, fourth grade year at the most, then they've already lost. Because now you're playing catch up, and the curriculum fundamentally changes anyway after fourth grade. That's what people don't understand. Most people that don't work in K-12 education don't understand that the curriculum fundamentally changes from learning to read to reading to learn.
Wow. And
if you didn't get the learning to read part, you've already lost. Yeah. Because now that gap that's like that achievement gap that's like that becomes like this, like this, like this, like this. Because education is a ladder to climb.
Yes.
And you can't skip steps.
No, you can't.
Right?
Right.
And so until we really make a focus on making sure that Jamal and Cindy and Susie know how to read, write, and comprehend, right? And they know, and we know that they can do it because if you give them a rap song, they can sing it verbatim. Hello?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So we already know that they have the capacity. This is not a capacity issue. This is a value issue. Do you value education? What do you value? Wow. Right? And so a lot of times what happens, and I'm saying this as a principal, a lot of times what happens is it gets put on us as educators to be everything. Mama, daddy, social worker, teacher, counselor, right? We can't be everything, right?
No, you can't.
I can 100% have an impact on a student's life, right?
Sure.
But there's someone at home that's having just as much, if not a greater impact on that child's life, right? Yeah. And the real question is, are we singing off the same sheet of music?
Wow.
Because if we're not, we're doing like this.
Yes.
And we're never coming together, right?
Right.
And so for me, I feel like sometimes I'm educating the parents just as much as I'm educating the students. Really? I'll share a quick story with you.
Tell me.
We had a student that got in trouble, and I had to give him a consequence. And so I didn't even realize it, but it just so happened that same day they had a game, okay? I'll have you know, their parent was more upset about them missing the game than missing school. Did you hear me? They were more upset about their child missing a football game than getting their education. So what I'm saying is, until our value systems change, we can talk equity all we want. The equity is there. Yeah. No child in America doesn't have access to some form of education to learn how to read, write, and comprehend. No child. And that's why I'm so big on AI, because I feel like AI will be in a lot of ways, if we use it correctly, a great equalizer in really ramping up the equity issue as it relates to access to K-12 education, right? And even college education. But, because I'm in the K-12 space, that's what I'm focused on. And truthfully, if you don't get that foundation right there, it don't matter. You're not going to college anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that foundational piece is key. And again, like I said, I just don't see the value. And when I think about the sacrifices my own mother made, we had the food stamps, we were on government assistance, we lived in the projects. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
That is not an excuse. And I'm not saying it's not an issue. It's 100% an issue.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I remember eating the block cheese and the puff wheats, and I get all that. I'm 100% on board, and I understand that is a real issue, right? But all we're doing is perpetuating that if we don't say to our children, this is the way out of this. Get a good quality education. Do what you need to do in school. Pull your pants up. Quit hiding in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Get serious about your homework. If we don't do that, then we're lost already as a people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess you can see I'm a little passionate about this.
Just a little bit, just a tiny
Just a
bit,
little bit,
right?
just a little
Right,
bit.
guys? Man, I mean, I'm just blown away because it's like you're there to educate the students.
Sure.
And so the parents, like, what I'm thinking about is, okay, where are the parents getting that though? Where did they get their value system? Because did that come from their parents? Did that come just from them? And once you get to that course, like, what actually does it take to require? Does it require to see your kid not make it, out of high school?
Yeah.
And then to be like, okay, now I'm awake. Now I got to get serious about it. Like, what's it going to take for the parents to change that value system? Because I agree 100% what you were just saying, but it's like, will they change though eventually? Like, what is it going to take?
I don't know. It's the thing that, because I will tell you, and like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years, and what has concerned me is like there's pockets of success, right? And there's not that sustainability of success. And what I mean by that is, you can go into any school in America. I don't care where it's at. It could be in the hood. It could be in a rural community. It could be in a suburban community. It doesn't matter. You're going to find pockets of excellence. But how do we mainstream that? How do we ensure that every student, all, capital ALL, all students are successful, right? And so for me, it is a value piece, and it does start with the parents because education begins at home. People say students start school in kindergarten. Wrong. Right out of the womb, the minute they're born, for 5 years, they're in school before they even hit our school. They've already gotten 5 years of someone else's beliefs, someone else's value system, right?
Yeah.
And if their behavior is not appropriate, learn behavior, right?
Right.
And so for me, it's like making sure that our parents understand how critical it is to read to their students when they're young, before they even hit school. Make sure their student. Why is a student learning their ABCs at kindergarten? They can learn their ABCs at 3.
Yeah.
They're speaking full sentences. So you can't tell me they can't learn A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right?
It's possible.
Literally, I can't tell you how many, because I've been a principal at every level, elementary, middle, and high school. I can't tell you how many kids from our black and brown communities have come into our schools and have never seen a crayon, have never held a pencil at 5 years of age.
Man.
And then we had, so what that does is that creates a gap already.
Yeah.
Right?
The catch up.
You're already
right
playing
there.
catch up.
Yeah, you're already playing.
You're already playing catch up. In a 100-yard race, you're already 10 yards behind.
That's just
right?
like that. Yeah.
And so for me, it starts with this early childhood education and making sure that our parents know how critical it is, to really pour into their kids as much as possible and to start creating those value systems early with our students, right?
Yeah.
So if they do that, when they come to us for kindergarten, they are able to access the education and be successful, right?
Yeah.
And even if they come, and let's say hypothetically there are some kids that come and there's some deficits, the parents have to be 100% committed, just like that parent I was telling you about that was committed to making sure their son played football, be 100% to making sure your son or daughter is literate.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Failure is not an option.
Nope.
Illiteracy is unacceptable, right? And if we don't get that mindset, right? I'll give you a good example. It's kind of like, and no parent would do what I'm going to say, but if they had the same mindset toward reading and learning and all that, then think about it from this standpoint. If you had a child and then you looked up at, I don't know, 16 months, they were 16 months old and they couldn't walk, you would do everything in your power to make sure they could walk. Because you know that they should have, by their 12th, 13th, 14th month of life on this earth, they should be walking.
Yes.
Right? So if you look up at month 17, 18, 19, 20, and your child's still ain't walking, you taking them to the doctor, you trying to find out what's going on. Why is my child still crawling? Why aren't they walking? This, that, and the other. We don't have that same sense of urgency about literacy. We don't realize that there are prison systems all across this country that they base their future bed count on the 4th grade failure rate of black boys.
What?
Let me repeat what I just said. The 4th grade failure rate of black boys is how they determine how many beds they're going to need in prison. And we don't take this thing called literacy seriously. Because here's what I will tell you. Jamal, at 20, is going to want the good life.
Sure.
Whether Jamal can read or not, Jamal is going to want the good life.
Right.
If Jamal cannot read, Jamal is going to do whatever he has to do in his power to have the good life. If that means doing nefarious things like being a street pharmacist, that's what Jamal is going to do, right?
Yeah.
But if Jamal has what he needs academically, then he can get a good job, then he can take care of himself, and he doesn't have to resort to those things.
Right.
So Jamal not being able to read is going to want the good life and do what he has to do, and Jamal being able to read and having access to his education is going to want the good life too. So you're still going to have two kids the same age that are going to want the good life. One, because they didn't get what they need to get early on in life academically, is going to have to resort to things that could lead to death or prison.
Wow.
Yep. And that's why this prison, the pipeline, is perpetuated, because our students cannot read, write, and comprehend.
Man. I didn't even know the importance of reading until
it's
hearing
huge,
this. That
man.
is huge. Huge. Anytime, in fact, I even bring, anytime I'm on break or I have a little break at work, I try to just read at least 10 pages. I'm actually reading an MLK book, A Gift of Love is what it's called. Yeah.
Nice.
But man, that was good, Dr. Williams. And I could see the passion. And speaking of the passion,
Sure.
you know, turnaround school leadership for you.
Yeah.
So I was looking at through your resume. So when you were working the pre-K through 6th grade in St. Louis, Missouri, you helped them reduce discipline referrals and suspensions by 50%. And that's just one of the accomplishments that you had on there.
Sure.
So when you, and that's very inspiring. Can you walk us through a little bit how some of the most significant transformations you've led in school, including those, and kind of what strategies you use to even come up with numbers like that? Because, I mean, suspensions, reducing that by 50% is a lot.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's super important to make sure you have the right people in place. So when you're talking about turnaround situations, it's a little bit different, right? Because you do have more autonomy, and you do have the ability to kind of flip the staff. So in addition to me coming in as new leadership, I also had the opportunity to hire 50% new staff. And so making sure that you get that right, because I can't be the principal, the counselor, the teacher in 1st, 2nd, 4th grade, right? Like I can't, right?
No.
And so it's important for me to make sure I have a standards-based, instructionally based, driven teacher in every classroom, making sure that they have the mindset, first and foremost, that all of our students can learn, regardless of economic, socioeconomic background, race, gender, does not matter. They can learn. And if you don't have that fundamental belief, you can't work for me.
Right.
Not long term.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's super important for me to believe that I have a teacher in every classroom believing just that. And so really that's what it starts with more than anything. They actually did a study, and the name of the study is going to escaped me, but what they did was they did a study, and it was a year-long study. And what they did was they tricked the teachers. They tricked one teacher into believing that they had the high-achieving students, right? And they tricked the other teacher into believing she had the lower-achieving students.
Yeah.
It turns out that it was reversed. Right. So the teacher that thought she had the lower-achieving students actually had the higher-achieving students, and the teacher that had the lower-achieving students thought that she had the higher,
Had
right?
the higher one, yeah.
Long story short, the teacher that thought she had the higher achieving students, guess how well those kids did? Knocked it out of the ballpark. Wow. The teacher that had the lower, that actually had the higher achieving students, but she thought, only she thought, she had the lower achieving students, those students didn't do that well. Why?
The teacher.
The teacher.
It's got to be.
It starts with the teacher. If a teacher believes that students can learn and can be successful, they will. Because students rise or fall to the level of the expectation of the teacher in the classroom.
Wow.
That's how important this is. So when that happens, and you say, how did the referrals go down? How did the discipline go down? Of course, because you believe in your student. And it's not to say that they're not going to be fifth graders, right? And have issues every now and then. But guess what? Because you believe so much in your student, you're not just sending them in a referral off to the office every single time either.
Yeah.
You're dealing with it right there in that classroom.
Yes.
Right? Just like you would deal with it if it was your own child, right?
Yeah.
And so again, it still comes back to that belief. Now, I also feel like it's important as a leader to make sure I'm supporting my teachers, right? So yeah, you have to give that unwavering support and belief in the teachers that they have what they need, you know, socially, emotionally to, you know, be successful in the classroom.
Certainly.
But again, I cannot stress enough how important it is for our teachers to believe that every child is capable of learning, maybe not at the same rate, maybe not on the same day, but every child can learn.
Yeah.
There it is.
There it is. There it is. When you're talking about this, Dr. Williams, I get flashbacks to my educational experience because I've had teachers that were, you could tell if they were passionate about what they're teaching.
Sure.
And other teachers that were just like, basically a substitute teacher almost.
There you go.
Where they're there for the paycheck. They don't care if you're getting in trouble. There's no passion. And because of that, you could feel the vibe of the classroom change and the students not be as invested too. So
very
important.
You can't fool students.
No, you can't.
You can't fool them. So I'm sure you quickly recognize and realize the teachers that were down for you and the teachers that could, you know, give less than a you know what.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I want to go a little bit into your 5 degrees. So we haven't stated them yet, but you have a BS, a Bachelor of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies. Yeah. A Master of Science in Educational Leadership.
Well, my first one, let me just, my first one was my associate's degree.
Your associate's degree.
Yeah. And
then
honestly, I'll be honest, totally transparent about this. That's the degree I'm most proud of.
Why is that?
It was the first. And it was the first in my family. So even though it was only a 2-year degree, more than anything, it validated for me that it could be done. Super proud of that associate's degree. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I had my bachelor's.
And then your bachelor's.
And it says interdisciplinary studies, but that just allowed me to kind of have a double major. So, like I said, pre-law and business, because I thought I was on my way to law school.
Yeah.
And then I got a master's in ed leadership because I had a really wise mentor tell me to get ed leadership, even though I had zero desire to be an administrator. He said, Joseph, you're telling me this at 25 years of age. He said, talk to me in 10 years, you might want to be an administrator. Wow. And he said something I never forgot. He said, Joseph, it's better to have something and not need it than to need something and not have it. Right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm so glad I listened to him because even though I got my master's in 98, I didn't use it until 2005. And so I didn't even use it for that purpose until 7 years after I got it. But exactly what he said came back.
Yeah, because you always had it there. You just
I had it. It was in my back pocket.
Yeah.
And when I needed to play it,
bam,
I could play it, right? And so that was a powerful degree, and it allowed me to become an administrator in 2005. But then, you know, it was like, you know, I got this undergrad and, you know, like I said, double major business. You know, why not get an MBA, right?
Yeah.
Plus, full disclosure, I didn't want to pay my student loans back. So I was like, you know what, let me jump into this MBA, and got my MBA and then my doctorate. So, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, how have, I guess, like with having those 5 degrees, have they influenced you in any way when it comes to you being a school administrator? I mean, obviously, you know, you're becoming more knowledgeable because your careers, you know, it ranges from educational pursuits and leadership and training all the way to business too. So
Yeah.
How did that shape you, I guess, as an administrator and teacher?
Yeah, I mean, the degrees, you know, I always say that, first of all, when you're an educator, even if you're not an educator, if you're just a person that wants to do better, I think it's super important to be a lifelong learner, right? Because I'm a firm believer that the world is going to keep moving forward whether you are a lifelong learner or not. So in that regard, you're either growing or you're dying. There is no status quo, right? I think about my grandmother. She passed away in 1991, my mother's mother, and if somehow miraculously, here we are 35 years later, she was able to come back to life, she would be totally lost because this world is not the same as it was in 1991, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you name any social media company, it did not exist in 1991. Google, Facebook, Amazon, you know.
None of them.
None
Not
of
even
them.
one.
None
Yes.
of them. Not even one, right?
Yeah.
That's how different this world is. And so you have to keep up. You have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to invest in yourself. Honestly, if I'm being honest about my degrees, I just look at them as the price of admission, right? Like I think, you know, if you're going to be whatever in whatever profession, there are certain, for lack of a better term, hoops they're going to make you jump through. Now, did I have to have an MBA to be an administrator? No. But I don't know what my next life is going to be. You know, I plan on being on this earth another 40, 50 years, right? So who knows, right? I have my own YouTube channel. I just wrote my 2nd book. Like I have a lot of things going on beyond just being a school principal.
Right.
And so I never know where what path that's going to lead me to. And I think it's very important for people to be open about what the future holds, because then you can pivot, and then you can, if you have the background, if you have the training, if you have the education, you can, you know, go into a new arena and it not be such a steep learning curve. There's always going to be a learning curve when you start anything new. But because I have that solid foundation academically and in business and in education, it's not going to be as hard. But yeah, I look at it as the price of admission. I mean, full disclosure, I'm working on my 6th degree. I have an EDD, which is an education doctorate, which it has more utility in the K-12 setting. But I'm actually working on my dissertation for my PhD at Liberty University, and so should be finished with that in the next year. And what that's going to do is just provide potential opportunities in the future for me to be a professor at the university level. So I might not ever use it for that, right? But that's okay. You know, at the end of the day, I'm also being a phenomenal role model for people like yourself, my own children.
Certainly.
You know, that, hey, it's possible and it can be done, right? And so, yeah, I'm a big believer in education, as you can see.
Wow. That is certainly inspiring to me and so many people. I'm sure that are listening. They're like, man, you know, I don't want to, you know, do the homework assignment, but it's like, man, take it day by day, assignment by assignment.
100.
You can do it too. You can get there. You've mentioned a little bit about your YouTube channel and your books. So let's step away from education and tell us a little bit more about the extracurriculars that you got going on outside from education.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that, you know, skills pay the bills. So, you know, obviously I have the skill to be a school leader. And so that's going to make sure that my family's taken care of, make sure that it presents opportunities for us to travel, for my kids to have opportunities to, you know, explore different things. And they've, you know, my kids are 11 and 14, and they probably have been almost 10 countries, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do they have a favorite, or do you have a favorite?
I would say their favorite is probably their mother's native country. My wife is Colombian.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, they go to Colombia pretty much every summer. The only 2 or 3 years they didn't go was during the pandemic. But other than that, they probably would say Colombia. But we've also lived in the Middle East. And, yeah, we've been to a lot of countries. I know me and my son, I don't know if my daughter and wife are going, but me and my son are going to India this summer, right? And so, yeah, you know, I'm a big believer in travel because they say a mind expanded can never return to its original form, right? So when you expand your mind, I think you really expand your mind with travel and, being exposed to other different cultures and whatnot. And so truthfully, even Africa is on our bucket list. We definitely want to go back to the motherland at some point. Haven't had a chance to go. We were actually going to go during those pandemic years, but my daughter was young, and they basically told us to wait until she was a little bit older than 5 years of age to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely on the bucket list. But yeah, I'm a big believer that, travel, all of that expands you and helps you to grow. So I can't say enough about that. But I'm sorry, I missed your question. What was
No.
Was there a question in that?
Just the extracurriculars, your YouTube channel.
Oh yeah,
and your books.
so actually, what happened was because I wasn't able to travel,
Right.
I was like, man, I'm tired. I need to do something.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was I started doing Instacart. I know people have heard of Instacart now, but it wasn't a thing before the pandemic. It was still there, but it didn't blow up until the pandemic, and so I didn't want to be stuck in the house, and I did that for like 8 months, made like $30,000
in 8 months.
In 8 months, yeah.
Man.
From March until December, I made like $30K. Saved every bit of it because I was still getting paid my administrator salary. But yeah, that was really cool. But also, I was like, I also need to do something, and I was like, man, I might as well start a podcast, might as well start a YouTube show. So I did, and I started interviewing people that I knew at first, and then it just kept growing, and I started interviewing people in the Middle East and people in the UK and people in China, and, I did it for the culture. I did it for the community, the school community, but, man, I've gotten so much out of it, and I've made connections with people all over the world, and it's really cool. I love it. I love it, and I do it mainly through Zoom.
Yeah.
So it's been really cool in that regard, and I'm 100% committed to it, but I'm actually getting ready to start another YouTube channel, like I said, that's focused on AI and K-12 education, because I do feel like this is just as big as, you name some of the inventions, television when it was first invented, the internet, like this is going to be huge.
Certainly.
And I feel like it's important to make people as knowledgeable as possible about all the potential opportunities, especially from an equity lens and artificial intelligence. So I definitely want to be on the forefront of that, and that's why I'm excited about that YouTube channel as well.
Yeah. From quickly before we pivot back to education, real quick.
Yeah.
From that YouTube channel where you said you were virtually interviewing people that are Chinese, and different cultures and stuff, is there one thing that you learned that stands out to you that from any of those cultures?
Yeah, there's a young lady that I interviewed from Kuwait, but she wasn't from Kuwait. She was from Bangladesh. And so it was really powerful, her story. She's working on her doctorate right now, and she's a special ed coordinator now, but she used to be a special ed teacher. And, from interviewing her, not just her, she's just one example, but, the one thing I learned more than anything with my podcast is nothing changes but the faces and the places. Nothing changes but the faces and the places, because at the end of the day, whether you're Bangladeshi or whether you're from India or China or Thailand or Greece or Italy, some of the countries that I've been to, people still want what's best for their kids. They still want their kids to have opportunities at a beautiful life. They still want their children to be educated to the highest possible extent. They still want them to have, post-secondary opportunities in university and college. And that's what I say, nothing changes but the faces and the places. So whether I'm talking to somebody that's from Bangladesh or Kuwait or Oman, it doesn't matter. They want the best. They want what's best for their kids. And from that standpoint, as human beings, there's not a big difference between any of us, to be honest.
Because we all want to feel, we all want to feel loved.
Yep.
We all want to be seen and heard,
Sure.
So we're all human. I mean, like you said, it's just different places and faces. So
there you go.
We are all human at the end.
Yeah.
Dr. Williams, we are coming towards the end. Before we get into the advice part and kind of the vision that you have, let's talk a little bit back in education, the role of community in education. So, through your experience, 2 decades plus of experience as, an educator, how can future upcoming educators or current educators out there, parents that we talked about, and community members kind of come together, collaborate so that we can improve the educational outcomes for all people, including
Sure.
our people and everyone, and kind of bring that positive kind of school culture for all?
Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, the one thing that, if I'm being totally transparent, that really hurts me and makes me sad, to be honest, is that a lot of the issues that I saw and encountered when I first came into K-12 education, I still see them today. And so it does concern me. But at the same time, I've always been a glass half full kind of guy, right? I think you can look at a cup that's half whatever, and you can say it's half empty, or you can say it's half full.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I've always been positive about the future. I have to be. I have an 11-year-old daughter, right? That 40 years from now won't even be my age. She'll be only 52 years of age, 51 years of age, and I'm 56 years of age. So she's going to be on this earth a long time after I'm gone, right? Yeah. My son is going to be on this earth a long time after I'm gone. So I have to be positive about the world they're going to live in one day, and the world my grandchildren, their children, are going to live in one day. But I also feel like it's super important for us to really be committed to the value system called education, right? Mm-hmm. And when I say that, I'm just really talking about the foundation, because I'm a big believer that K-12 education gives you options, right? I'll use a perfect example. My wife is Colombian, right? Mm-hmm. We were 100% committed that our daughter and son would be fluent in Spanish.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And so even though we lived in America, even though my wife was learning English and wanting to learn English, I was very adamant that she would only speak to our children in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Going back to what we were talking about earlier, by the time they hit kindergarten, guess who knew Spanish? Both of my kids.
Wow.
They didn't have to wait until kindergarten to learn it, right? Those first 5 years, just by talking to them, they learn Spanish, right?
Value system.
Value system. Yeah. We valued them learning a second language, and guess what? They learned it.
And they did it, yeah.
Our children do not lack capacity. Let me repeat what I just said. Our children do not lack capacity. They just lack teachers. Matter of fact, they just lack teachers that believe in them. Right?
Because that experiment you're telling me about.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just lack teachers that believe in them. And I was 100% sure that my kids would learn Spanish, and guess what?
And they did.
Sometimes I feel like I'm in Colombia. I'm like, what are we saying here? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because when they start talking fast, I can't keep up. I understand a lot of Spanish, but, you know, and it's a beautiful thing, right?
Certainly.
Because when you think about young people, I'll share this example with you. If you had a brand new sponge here and you had a sponge that was used, that brand new sponge can absorb a whole lot more than that used sponge. So when you're talking about something as important as a language, it's important to teach them early. Yeah. Because then they can just soak it up. But that's in anything, right? Mm-hmm. If you teach them early enough, they can soak it up, they can learn it, right? They don't lack capacity. They just lack teachers. But if we take that same child, don't teach them anything when they're young, and now we're playing catch up when they're 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yes.
Now they're an old sponge. They can still absorb a little bit, but not nearly as much
as that new sponge.
New sponge, right?
Certainly. Yeah.
And so super important that we start valuing education and in fact, early education, so that our students have that solid foundation. I'm going to even say something radical. I believe elementary teachers and I believe early childhood teachers should be paid the most, because they set the foundation for everything. Because if that child gets to middle school and didn't get what they need in elementary or early childhood, they're already lost. We're going to save some of them. Now,
sure.
Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But in terms of sustainability and consistency and being able to reach the masses, it's not going to happen if we don't get that first part right, right? Yeah. So I think we should pay them more, because they're critical to a student having success in middle and high school.
Without that foundation, and there's no building.
There you go.
So certainly.
Yeah.
And that connects to, because I learned, again, I was born in Eritrea and came to Seattle when I was 3.5, almost 4 years old.
Okay.
I came in knowing zero English, very fluent in Tigrinya. Yeah. And because I had parents that had belief in me, I learned English in before kindergarten.
See? Yeah. There you go.
And just because those teachers were like, don't worry about it, he's going to mingle with the other kids, learn it, and I slowly picked it up just by playing with the cars, the toys.
There you go. Yeah, yeah.
You know, so the capacity is definitely there.
100%. 100%.
So, absolutely. Well, Dr. Williams, let's talk a little bit about the vision for the future.
Yeah.
And I also believe, I actually have a shirt called "The Future Looks Bright." I'm a big optimistic person.
There
like
you go. 100.
Glasses half full is kind of the way I see things. Currently, you're the executive director of K through 12 Multimedia Group.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit what your vision is for empowering educators and entrepreneurs to develop their own personal brands with the multimedia group that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'll be honest, I pivoted a little bit on that because, like I said, this AI thing is huge, man.
Yeah.
And when I started K-12 Multimedia Group, AI wasn't a thing like it is now. ChatGPT wasn't out, so a little bit different. So really the focus really is on educating people about AI because I do feel like it's the next big thing. And so that's the focus. And really my company is just the umbrella for all the things I have going on, right? Whether it's, elevating K-12 education, where I interview, K-12 educators, or whether it's the diary of a K-12 educator where I'm talking about all this AI stuff. So yeah, I mean, I just look at it as a big umbrella and, whatever I want to do, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, just like that. I love it. I love it.
this?
Yeah, of course. Please reach and grab. Well, Dr. Williams, we are at the part of the podcast. This is personally my favorite, where we call it the deep end. And this is the part of the podcast where I ask the advice question.
Okay.
And the advice to the younger generation. So, Dr. Williams, to your two kids, to me, to Semi, to all the younger folks out there that are going to be on this earth for another 10, 20, 30 plus years.
Yeah.
They're going to be within that AI revolution and in an ever-changing world. What advice would you give us that are either people that are trying to pursue their own field, or it could be a similar field to you? General advice, what would you give us?
2 statements. Stay hungry, stay thirsty. Stay hungry, stay thirsty. Don't get content. Because the minute you get content, that's when people pass you by. Stay hungry, stay thirsty, right?
Wow.
And if you do that, then you're going to have an opportunity, because anything that comes up, you're going to be ready to roll. You're going to be ready to go after it, right? And so even with you, with this podcast, like, this is amazing. There's a book out there by James Altucher. It's called Choose Yourself. That's what you did. You chose yourself. You could have said, hey, there's a podcast needed about, the Black experience. I hope somebody starts it. Or you could have said what you exactly did. There's a podcast that needs to be out there about the Black experience, and I'm going to do it. I choose myself.
Certainly.
So, yeah, stay hungry, stay thirsty.
Stay hungry, stay thirsty. What a way to close it.
Yeah.
Dr. Williams, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you. Before I actually close, is there any last-minute shout-outs, anything that you want to plug, anything that you want to throw out there?
I can't think of anything. Like, I'm just happy. I'm proud of you, what you're doing. Proud of my kids. I want them to have an amazing life, but not just my kids. I have 950 students that I go, and lead every day, Monday through Friday. So I want the best for them as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Williams. And I appreciate you guys for tuning into this video. I hope you guys took away a lot from this, because I certainly learned. Parents out there, it starts with you guys. So I hope all parents, all educators took a lot of things from this. And as usual, y'all, comment down below and your thoughts of this video. Subscribe, like, share with anyone that you think could use this episode. And we will catch y'all on the next one. Till next time, guys. Peace. What is up, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to that episode. Make sure to click the subscribe, follow button, as well as the bell to get notified on all my new content that is coming out every Wednesday and every other day. And make sure to click that link in the description down below to get access to all my socials and any other platforms that I have my podcast on. And until next time, y'all, peace.